Today we are talking empowerment, um, brought back to my attention again. I'm working with the CEO, coaching him. And when I interview his people to get their perspective, they say that he spends too much of his time in the weeds. That's their term. That is, he's making the decisions that they should be making. They don't feel empowered. So they're just kind of waiting around for him to tell them what to do. Now, the company as a whole is therefore missing out. They're not getting the value from these high-powered and high-paid executives. So with that, anyway, so I was thinking about my friend, my client, and I was reminded of these. Now, let's see if I can orient these. If you know what these are called, of course, this is a bowl. Inside of that is another bowl. Inside of that is a third bowl, and if we have more, they keep going on. These are known as nesting bowls. I came across the concept of nesting bowls in terms of management theory about 20 years ago from a gentleman by the name of John Carver. John Carver was very well known in the nonprofit board development field. He wrote a book called Boards That Make a Difference. His frame is known as policy governance, and if you're in nonprofits, you either love John Carver or you hate him. That's a topic for another day. But one of the things that really captured me that I thought, oh, this is brilliant, is John's basic premise in terms of talking with boards is that boards, typical nonprofit boards, they get in the weeds. They're thinking about things like budget minutia and who's hiring whom, and it basically makes many nonprofits very ineffective. It's like a second staff that somehow the CEO can't manage. His solution was to say, no, we're going to have a very clear line. Boards govern, CEOs and their staffs execute. Okay. In order for boards to govern very well, they need to establish policy. And this policy actually is in two broad areas. John said you need policy that governs results, and you need policy that sets boundaries. So we'll kind of take these and for a minute, and I think I'll talk in terms of nonprofits, and then we'll see if we can bring it back around to my friend, the CEO, in his situation here in just a minute. But the basic concept is that all organizations, all nonprofit organizations, exist to fulfill a mission, serve the poor, serve meals, whatever that is, reading, so forth. So there's certain results they have to achieve. And there's certain boundaries that they cannot cross, right? Like we can't have our staff stealing from people, right? And putting us and basically our whole organization at risk. John said that the boards should govern the CEO's performance by simply establishing policy, and you do it from the general to the more specific, or as he talked about it, the large bowl into the smaller bowl into the smaller bowl. And so what he might say is the first level of result was fulfill. You know what? I'm not going to spell this right, but guess what? My flip charts have a spell check button, so when everything is over, I'll just hit that and it'll all take care of it. So anyway, fulfill the mission. That might be the largest bowl of results. Okay, and the largest bowl in terms of boundaries is nothing illegal. And John said that, hey, now it's up to the board. So you set this highest level of policy, and now the board has a distinct choice. You either say this is all the direction that our CEO needs, and as long as that person fulfills the mission and doesn't do anything illegal, then that person's job is considered done well. Now, you say, fulfill the mission. That's mighty broad. That's very general. How would someone know? Well, this is what the board does. If the board says, yes, we're stopping there, they must accept any reasonable interpretation provided by the CEO that, in fact, that person says, I did fulfill the mission. And if they are unwilling to go with any reasonable interpretation, they've got to be more specific. So they might put this in and say 1,000 meals served. Okay, and they might go on and say to 500 people. Okay, so that's one layer. That's a bowl inside of the larger bowl. And again, the board is now faced with that exact same choice. Are you comfortable now that you've stipulated that in fact over the course of this year 1,000 meals must be served to 500 people? Are you then willing to step back and say, job done? As long as that happens, then we will accept any reasonable interpretation of performance from that point on. And so the deal is that the board can establish bowl within bowl within bowl within bowl within bowl, which will be distinctly different from organization to organization based upon the strength of the board and the strength they believe of the individual CEO. So they put whatever constraints are appropriate, at which point they say, we're done. This is the point that we stop. And anything below this, CEO, is your purview. You just make it all happen and we're entirely good. Now, of course, the other part, don't do anything illegal. You might have other boundaries that say you can't put the organization in any kind of financial debt, right? So zero debt, right? And you might have a number of areas that you say, hey, here's some areas you just can't cross. But again, at a certain point, the board says, we're done. And anything that accomplishes these results without crossing these lines is considered great performance, and we will accept any reasonable interpretation. Okay. How does that relate to my friend? I believe my friend, the CEO of a for-profit, in fact, a fairly profitable international organization, needs to walk through this same exercise. He needs to get very clear for each of for sales, for supply chain, every one of the VPs that reports to him. He needs to get real clear on, all right, let's just start at the top. What's, supply chain? Ensure that we have materials. Okay. But are there certain parts of that? Are there materials? Does that job performance, does that mean multiple vendors? That's required in order for this CEO to feel comfortable. That's fine. Take it as many bowls deep as you want. But at a certain point, you say, yes, if job is done in accordance with those results that I need to see, everything else is entirely up to you. That's your playing field. Here's the boundaries that you can't cross. Here's the things that I need to see. And you may have boundaries around cost. You may have boundaries around team morale. You get to set those too. But once you do, and once you actually get into the practice of doing this is intellectually go, oh, I get it. And you can start going, okay, yep, that's what I need to see. That's what I need to see. That's what I need to see. Good. As long as that happens, I'm comfortable. Same thing with the boundaries. So if you like this idea, I encourage you to, the gentleman's name is John Carver. The book was Boards That Make a Difference. He wrote 3 or 4 of them. But if you like that style of management, he goes into great detail there. I'd encourage you to read it. And again, it has direct transfer into the for-profit world. Give me some comments below. Let me know what you think, and look forward to hearing from you.